Hi, my name is Allison Mitchell, and I'm one of the Natural Land Specialists for the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation Department. Thank you very much for signing up to be a Boulder Reservoir Outreach Volunteer. In this virtual training, I will provide you with all the information that you will need to be a successful volunteer. In this presentation, we will go over the following: the volunteer program goals, volunteer duties, tips for talking to visitors, and education topics. In this first section, I will provide information about the goals of the program and the reasons why the program was created. First, did you know that the Parks and Recreation Department manages over 1,000 acres of undeveloped parkland? That's more than all the playing fields and developed parks combined. These small urban natural areas, managed by the Parks and Recreation Natural Lands team, creates a network of connected habitats in and around the city of Boulder. They are important to Boulder's urban ecosystem because they provide important corridors for wildlife throughout the city, retain critical habitat for a variety of wildlife and plant species, and create connections to nature close to home. The three field staff of the Natural Lands team focuses on 4 core areas: integrated pest management, wildlife management, maintenance, and community engagement. As a volunteer, you will be helping the Natural Lands team monitor 2 of the largest natural lands properties near the Boulder Reservoir. The Natural Lands Outreach Volunteer Program began in 2020 in response to high levels of visitation, an increase in violations, and limited staff capacity to address these challenges. During the pilot year of the program, Coot Lake in the North Shore experienced a 24% increase in visitation. At the same time, the City of Boulder underwent staff changes, including furloughs and layoffs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. With not enough staff presence, the Parks and Recreation Department did not have the ability to effectively protect the natural resources, water, and trails along Coot Lake and the Boulder Reservoir. The department has also recorded an increase in violations to park rules. These challenges continue to this day, and the Parks and Recreation Department is excited to continue this volunteer opportunity, which will help us monitor use and behavior, as well as provide important environmental and public health outreach to visitors. Thank you very much for being an outreach volunteer. There are 2 goals of this volunteer program. The first is to provide education to visitors, and the second is to monitor visitor use and behavior. In this next section, I will provide you with information about what you will be doing as a volunteer, where to pick up your materials, how to enter data, and what each shift will entail. As a volunteer, you can choose to sign up for an outreach or a patrol shift. As an outreach volunteer, you will staff a table to welcome and educate visitors about site-specific topics. For the patrol shift, you will record and monitor visitor use and behavior along the North Shore by monitoring the area. For the patrol shift, you will walk along the North Shore and Coot Lake trails, collecting data on visitor use, behavior, and violations. While monitoring, you are encouraged to report violations to reservoir staff. These types of violations can include launching a watercraft or swimming along the North Shore. Please note, you never need to provide any type of enforcement. That's for staff to take care of. This position will focus on monitoring and education only. For the outreach shift, volunteers will set up an educational table at either the Coot Lake Trailhead or the 55th Trailhead and provide education as visitors walk by. Outreach will focus on 3 main topics: aquatic nuisance species, wildlife closures, and area-specific rules. While staffing the table, you will also collect data on visitor patterns, volume, and behavior. When you observe rule violations, you are encouraged to contact reservoir staff who can provide assistance when available. Just like the patrol volunteer, you are not expected to provide any type of enforcement, as this position will focus on monitoring and education only. Volunteers are required to commit to 2 shifts from May to September for a minimum total of 10 shifts this season. If you'd like to volunteer more than the minimum requirement, we will gladly accept your help. Shifts with the greatest need are during Saturdays and Sundays from approximately 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. when visitation is highest. We also need volunteers on the weekdays as well. When you sign up for a shift, if you would like to volunteer at a different time than what is listed, we can easily set up a shift that accommodates your schedule. When you begin your shift, please send a group text to the reservoir staff to notify them you have started your shift, or check in with the reservoir staff at the gate as you enter to get your supplies. This will allow staff to prioritize where to place boat patrol and other staff. Your role will be to greet and assist visitors and provide information on different environmental topics. You will also help to minimize rule violation encounters with visitors by observing and recording minor issues on your data sheet. For major issues, such as swimming or launching watercrafts from the North Shore, you will call the reservoir staff to alert them of these issues. After your shift, you will receive a feedback form from Count Me In, which will allow you to record your volunteer hours and report the data you collected during your shift. This map shows different locations along the North Shore of Boulder Reservoir where both the outreach and patrol volunteer will work. The 55th Trailhead is located on the northwest side of Boulder Reservoir along 55th Street, and Coot Lake is located on the northeast side along 63rd Street. The two yellow stars on the map denote the locations where the outreach volunteer will set up their table. These locations are at the start of each trail. The light blue box around the North Shore represents the area where the patrol volunteer will monitor. We encourage the patroller to monitor the entire area and walk all the trails throughout their entire shift. This way, volunteers can record use and report violations to staff from all locations. The red area on the map are the two wildlife closure locations. The wetland west of Coot Lake and the area southwest of the 55th Street Trailhead are closed to all visitors and their dogs to protect breeding birds of concern. Due to limited parking at both trailheads, patrol volunteers and Coot Lake outreach volunteers are encouraged to park in the Tom Watson parking lot located on 63rd Street. For outreach volunteers stationed at the 55th Trailhead, we will provide you a sign to place in your vehicle if the lot is full. It is very important you do this as a tow company sometimes patrols the area. If you are an education volunteer, you will be setting up your table at either the 55th Trailhead or the Coot Lake Trailhead. For the 55th Trailhead location, we recommend placing the table in an open field located about 25 feet south of the parking lot. This way, visitors will have to pass you as they head south to the North Shore area. You will also be able to talk to anyone trying to bring in a watercraft at this location. For the Coot Lake Trailhead, we recommend placing the table directly southwest of the parking lot along the paved shoreline of the lake. If you pass the restrooms or go over the wooden bridge, you have gone too far. Please note that at each of these trailheads there is a trail counter, which is shown in green on these two photos. Please make sure you do not set up your table in front of these counters, as it will inflate visitor use, which the department is closely monitoring at this time. Both the outreach and patrol volunteers will be provided paper data sheets to complete during each shift. Staff will email the data sheets to you, which you can print at home. The boat inspection building will also have extra copies for anyone that needs data sheets. The location of the boat inspection building and where other supplies is located will be covered in the following slides. After your volunteer shift, the Count Me In system will send you a feedback form. This form will allow you to transfer your data from your paper data sheet to an online system where staff can then collect and analyze the information from all volunteers. There are different data sheets for the patrol and outreach shifts. This here is what the patrol data sheet looks like. At the top of the data sheet, please fill out your name, the date, and the start and end times of your shift. The next two boxes labeled North Shore and Coot Lake are where you will enter observations about the number of people in the water and how many people have a watercraft. In the next section, you will answer questions about your interactions with visitors and if you called boat patrol, reservoir staff, or 911. The third section is where you will tally how many people you saw in the wildlife closure. And in the final section, you can record any information about your shift. Let's walk through an example. My name is Allison, and I am monitoring on June 2nd. I begin my shift at 1:30 p.m., but I leave the end time blank for now because I'm not sure how long I will monitor for. I parked at the 55th Street Trailhead, so I begin to monitor on the north side first. At 1:30, I am standing at the beach and can see two people in the water. One is wading, which is allowed if the water is below their knees, and one person is swimming, which is not allowed. In the North Shore box, I write 1:30, since that's the current time, and put 2 tally marks in for how many people are in the water section. I do not see anyone else, so I wander down the path to the spillway. Along the way, I only passed 3 people, but they're not carrying a watercraft or swimming, so I don't have to add any new tally marks in. When I come to the spillway, there was a woman swimming in the water, so I add an extra tally mark next to the 2 I have under the 130 section. I end this loop, and then since I'm on the north side, I decide to go check out the Coot Lake side. When I arrive to the edge of the lake, it is 2:00 p.m. I see one person wading in the water. I enter 2 o'clock into the Coot Lake section and a tally mark for the wader. I walk around for a little, but do not see anyone else, so decide to head back to the north side. When I get to the north shore, it is 2:30 p.m. I see 2 people in the water. I enter the time, which is 2, and add 3 tally marks for those 3 people. As I walk to the west side of the property, I notice 4 people swimming and place 4 tally marks in the 2:30 section. As I get closer to the end of the north shore, I see a man push off with his paddleboard. When I get to the end, he is entering the wildlife closure. I place a tally mark for both the watercraft section and the wildlife closure section. I decide to give Boat Patrol a call as well. It is now 3 o'clock and I decide to make one last loop along the north shore. As I walk, I see 3 people in the water, so I put 3 tally marks under the 3:00 p.m. section. When I am done with my shift, I enter the end time, which is 3 o'clock, and add the notes about the visitation levels for the day and the paddleboard violation. This is what an outreach data sheet looks like. At the top of the data sheet, please fill out your name, the date, the start time, and the end time of your shift. The main section is where you will record information about how many people you interacted with and what you discussed. In the second section, you will tally how many people you saw in the water, carrying a watercraft, and entering the wildlife closure areas. The third section is about how many times you contacted staff or the police. And finally, in the last section, you can record any information about your shift. Let's walk through an example of an outreach shift data sheet. My name is Allison, and I am volunteering on May 1st. I begin my shift at 10:15 a.m. I staff the table for 2 hours from 10:30 to 12:30, and in those 2 hours, I talk to 23 people. After someone leaves the table, I place a tally mark for each person that came up to the table. Based on our conversation, I then place a tally mark in the corresponding boxes about the topic. I talked to 4 people about aquatic nuisance species, 11 people about wildlife closures, and 8 people about park rules. 5 other people asked me other questions, including the location of the restrooms and what I was doing. From my table, I could see people in the water along the north shore, so each time someone was in the water, I placed a tally mark. 2 swimmers were past the buoys, so I called Boat Patrol as a safety measure. During my shift, 3 girls tried to bring their paddleboards in. I mentioned they were not allowed to launch from the north shore, but they could from the south shore. They turned around, so I didn't need to call Boat Patrol. At 12:30, I decided to pack up for the day. It took me about 15 minutes to drop off the supplies, so my end time was 12:45 for my shift. Before I left for home, I recorded my observations from the day in the last section. This volunteer position focuses on monitoring and education only. Remember, you will never need to provide enforcement to anyone. That is for staff to take care of. However, we would like volunteers to call Lake Patrol or send a group text to Reservoir staff, which includes Stacy, Lena, and Jamie, if you see any violations. Violations to contact staff about involve 1. Someone carrying a watercraft to the North Shore or Coot Lake, 2. Trying to launch the watercraft into the water, 3. Someone swimming in Coot Lake or the north side of the Boulder Reservoir, or 4. People entering the wildlife closure areas. Reservoir staff will try their best to come as quickly as they can, but please note that staff capacity is limited or they may be dealing with another issue and cannot respond immediately. In the white and orange box is the contact information you can use to call any of the staff. For any life-threatening issues, always call 911. Remember, if you observe something that does not need immediate attention, just record it on your data sheet. We will provide you a table, shade umbrella, all education pamphlets, data sheets, and any other supplies you may need. Make sure you bring sunscreen water, snacks, pencil, and your cell phone to call or text reservoir staff if needed. All supplies are located at the Boat Inspection Building, which is located immediately northeast of the Boulder Reservoir entrance station. Once you pass through the entrance gates, immediately turn left into the Aquatic Nuisance Species Inspection area. If you pass the road for Dream Cove or make it to the main South Shore parking lot, you have gone too far. Please note that there could be a line to enter the reservoir, so please plan accordingly and allow enough time to pick up the supplies before your shift. The entrance gate staff will have your name on a list, so you do not need to pay to enter to pick up the supplies. If you are a monitoring volunteer and have a data sheet with you, you will not need to pick up supplies at the boat inspection building. This is for the education staff only. You can simply begin your shift at the North Shore or Coot Lake. Please remember to text reservoir staff to let them know you have started your shift. Count Me In is the online volunteer portal for the City of Boulder. It allows you to search and register for any volunteer activities that are offered by the city. If you are listening to this presentation and have received our emails, you have already used this website. It is the one that you use to create a profile and register for the volunteer program. In your volunteer role, you will use Count Me In to sign up for your shifts, enter data from your shifts, and record your volunteer hours. The following 2 slides will provide you instructions on how to complete each of those tasks. To sign up for a patroller outreach shift, log into your account at countmein.bouldercolorado.gov. On your main homepage, you will see a blue banner at the top of the website. Click on the tab that says Shifts. If you want to be a patrol volunteer and monitor Coot Lake and the North Shore, click on the Volunteer button in the Natural Lands Monitor section. If you want to be an outreach volunteer, click Volunteer in the Outreach and Education section. Finally, choose the exact times you would like to sign up for by clicking on the small box next to the day of the week. A check mark will appear when you have selected the date. To enter the data you collected during your patroller outreach shift, you will enter this on the Count Me In form that you receive via email. After each shift, the email will come from the City of Boulder. Sometimes this email ends up in your spam folder, so please be sure to search for it there if you do not see an email after each shift. In the email, there will be instructions that say, click here to submit your feedback. Click on the word Here. This will take you to a form where you will transfer your data from your paper data sheet that you filled out during your shift to an online format. Fill out the form and then click Send Feedback to submit your form. If you have any questions about the monitoring protocols, supply locations, Count Me In website, or need to reach a staff member, please email the Natural Lands team at the address listed on this slide, and we will be happy to answer any questions you may have. In this next section, you will learn about 3 important topics that we hope you highlight when interacting with visitors. The 3 main topics are 1. Aquatic nuisance species, 2. Water use and the regulations for Boulder Reservoir, and 3. The wildlife closures that surround the Boulder Reservoir and Coot Lake to protect 4 breeding bird species of concern. Aquatic nuisance species are aquatic plants and animals that invade different types of water bodies. These non-native species pose a significant threat to aquatic resources and infrastructure. The Boulder Reservoir currently has no known populations of aquatic nuisance species, but the threat of contamination to the Boulder Reservoir is increasing due to the growing number of contaminated bodies of water in our region. These non-native species are increasingly being transported between bodies of water in Colorado and across the U.S. by unsuspecting boaters and other waterway users. We know that there are New Zealand mud snails within walking distance of the reservoir and zebra and quagga mussels within driving distance. Aquatic nuisance species can reduce game fish populations, ruin boat engines, dramatically impact the operations of drinking water plants and dams, reduce native species populations, degrade ecosystems, and affect human health. In Colorado, the 3 main species of concern are zebra and quagga mussels, New Zealand mud snails, and the rusty crayfish. Zebra and quagga mussels are small freshwater mollusks that are relatives of clams and oysters. Their shells are yellow to dark brown and often have stripes. They can grow up to 2 inches long. They are native to Eastern Europe and were discovered in 1988 in the United States by contaminated ballast water. These mussels can survive out of water for 30 days, and many infestations have occurred by adult mussels hitching rides to watercrafts. The three main reasons they are invasive is 1. Their ability to attach to hard surfaces and therefore be transported on watercrafts to new water bodies, 2. Their rapid reproduction rates, and 3. Their ability to filter feed at amazing rates, which reduces food for native aquatic species. Since 2014, there are no waters that have tested positive for these mussels in Colorado due to the extensive decontamination stations at reservoirs. To reduce the spread, follow the clean, drain, dry process. Clean your boat, trailer, hitches before and after you enter a water body. Drain every space or item that could hold water, and dry your equipment and allow for sufficient time for boats to dry. New Zealand mud snails are an invasive freshwater snail. They are dark brown, extremely small, and shaped like a unicorn horn. They are invasive because they are voracious eaters that reproduce rapidly. This negatively affects the aquatic insect larvae, native snail, and fish populations. Did you know that New Zealand mud snails can reproduce sexually or asexually, so just one snail can start an entirely new population of over 40 million snails? Humans have accidentally moved New Zealand mud snails from one body to another when they cling to waders, boats, dogs, and other gear. In Boulder, mud snails were found in Boulder Creek in 2004 and have spread to areas since then. The best way to prevent their spread is to scrub the bottom of your boots and waders after leaving a body of water, and then let your gear dry for 10 days between uses or put it in a freezer overnight. But most importantly, we simply need to prevent the spread. Once a New Zealand mud snail population establishes, it is almost impossible for them to be removed because there are currently no known removal solutions. Rusty crayfish are larger and more aggressive than native freshwater crayfish. They are native to the Ohio River basin and believed to have been introduced to Colorado by anglers as bait. An easy way to identify them is they have rusty patches on either side of their body. Rusty crayfish are invasive because they outcompete and displace native crayfish and will eat small native fish, aquatic insects, and eggs. They also eat aquatic vegetation, which damages underwater habitat that is important for fish spawning, cover, and food. In Colorado, the rusty crayfish was first detected in the Yampa River in 2009. One way to prevent their spread is to only use Colorado bait. Make sure you never bring in live aquatic bait from another state. The second education topic is about water use and park regulations, including no swimming and no possession of watercrafts on the North Shore or in Coot Lake. Recreational watercrafts, including boats, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards, are a significant source of the spread of aquatic nuisance species. Therefore, in 2008, the State of Colorado Aquatic Nuisance Species Act was signed into law and requires mandatory watercraft inspections and decontamination of all boats and watercrafts. The goal is to prevent the spread of zebra and quagga mussels, as well as other aquatic nuisance species, from infesting Colorado water resources and threatening our water storage and distribution systems. At the Boulder Reservoir, all watercrafts are required to pass through an inspection station on the North Shore. If someone skips this step and brings their watercrafts to the North Shore without an inspection, they could potentially introduce an aquatic nuisance species into the reservoir, causing millions of dollars of damage to the ecosystem and infrastructure. In addition, swimming is not allowed on the North Shore of the Boulder Reservoir. This is because boaters are not expecting swimmers to be in the water on the north side. Swimming on the North Shore is a safety issue for the swimmers, as there is a potential to be hit by watercraft operators unaware of their presence. If you see someone swimming, you can always let them know that swimming is allowed on the designated swimming area on the South Shore. The third topic is about wildlife closures. From March 15th to September 10th each year, the three wetlands, Little Dry Creek, and Coot Lake, adjacent to the Boulder Reservoir, are closed to protect nesting bird species of concern. Most of these species populations are declining due to the loss of wetland habitat, so the City of Boulder works hard to protect these known nesting sites. The four species of concern are osprey, northern harrier, American bittern, and burrowing owl. This is a map that shows the location of the seasonal wildlife closures at the Boulder Reservoir and Coot Lake. All the areas in red are closed to the public from March 15th to September 10th. If you see people or dogs in these areas, please let reservoir staff know immediately. When you are driving around the reservoir or walking around Coot Lake, you will see these yellow wildlife closure signs placed near the closed wetlands. Again, these closures are to protect our 4 breeding birds of concern. The first is the American bittern. They are medium-sized, light brown herons that nest in cattail marshes. Their populations have declined statewide as marshes have been destroyed and fragmented. Burrowing owls are our second bird species of concern. They are small brown owls, about 10 inches tall, that nest in prairie dog colonies. Burrowing owl populations are declining due to the loss of nesting habitat in prairie dog colonies, fragmented habitat, automobile collisions, and poisoning of insect prey. In Boulder County, they were once considered abundant, but are now listed as imperiled. Our third bird species of concern is the northern harrier. They are slender hawks with long banded tails and an owl-like facial disc. Males are gray above and white below, and females are brown with heavy brown streaking on their breast. Northern harriers nest in wetlands, grasslands, and shrublands. Their nest is a platform of grass, reeds, and cattails placed on the ground and concealed by thick vegetation. They were once considered fairly common breeders in Boulder County, but now northern harriers have nested only recently at 4 known locations: Boulder Reservoir, Coot Lake, Loggerman Reservoir, and the wet meadows south of Hygiene Road. Osprey are our fourth bird species of concern. They are large raptors with dark brown backs, white breasts, white heads, and a prominent dark eye stripe. They nest near lakes on the plains or beside rivers, lakes, or beaver ponds in the mountains. The previous education topics we just discussed are what we hope you share with visitors the most. However, you are most likely to be asked other questions besides those topics. Therefore, we created a frequently asked questions document to provide answers to common questions. This FAQ sheet is in your volunteer handbook. For any questions that you do not know, you can always have the visitor email us or tell them to visit the Parks and Recreation website. In this final section, I will provide you tips on how to interact with visitors. This section will also provide 2 scenarios that most likely will occur and ways to go about talking with the visitor. The most important thing to remember when monitoring or staffing an education table is you never need to enforce the rules. You will never need to interact with someone in a confrontational manner. Remember, your safety is key, and you never need to place yourself in an uncomfortable situation. When interacting with visitors, always maintain a friendly and positive manner. You have a profound effect on a visitor's impression and experience. Try to put yourself in the visitor's shoes. You wouldn't want to be yelled at for not following the no watercraft rule, but if someone asked you a question and provided a fun fact, maybe you would be more likely to put your kayak back in the car and launch from the South Shore. Not everyone will want to talk to you, and that's okay. Simply treat visitors the way you would like to be treated. Listen to their concerns or needs, and treat people with respect. During your shift, it is important to provide education to visitors and encourage good behavior by explaining the why of situations. For example, if someone is swimming along the North Shore, you wouldn't want to say, "No swimming," and walk away. It is important to tell the swimmer the reason why no swimming is allowed. You would want to explain it as a safety hazard, and boaters are not on the lookout for swimmers along the North Shore. You are simply worried about their safety and don't want anything bad to happen to them. The next 2 slides provide examples of 2 very common scenarios that are likely to happen during your shift. In any situation, remember to be friendly and positive, but your safety is the most important, so never place yourself in an unsafe or uncomfortable situation. For example, staff have observed visitors bringing and launching paddleboards, tubes, kayaks, and other watercrafts along the North Shore of Boulder Reservoir. The park rule is a visitor cannot be in possession of a watercraft on the North Shore. This means that if you see someone carrying a watercraft, they don't even have to be launching it, but somewhere along the North Shore or near Coot Lake, they are violating the city park regulations. Visitors can only have a watercraft or launch it from the South Shore because the Parks and Recreation Department is trying to prevent any aquatic nuisance species from accidentally being introduced into the reservoir. All watercrafts, even small ones like a kayak, must go through the inspection on the South Shore to ensure there are no New Zealand mud snails or quagga or zebra mussels attached to the watercraft. If someone even had one mud snail attached to their paddleboard, that one snail could start an entirely new population, costing the city of Boulder millions of dollars to remove from the reservoir. That is why the no watercraft rule is so important. In this situation, you would not want to ignore someone's thoughts, be cold or condescending, mention, "It's not my job," or ever raise your voice. Remember, always be friendly and positive. Dogs off leash are a common sight at Coot Lake in the North Shore. Dogs can be off leash if they are part of the City of Boulder's Voice and Sight program. Staff have received a significant number of complaints of off-leash dogs approaching people or other dogs who do not want to be approached. Another big concern near the Boulder Reservoir, especially on the western side, is rattlesnakes. Staff have confirmed the presence of rattlesnakes every year, and in the past there have been incidents of dogs being bitten by rattlesnakes. If you see a dog off leash who does not have a voice and sight tag, you can kindly ask them to leash their dog and remind them that they must be part of the Voice and Sight program. You can also mention that the rattlesnakes have been confirmed this year, so leashing their dog could help prevent a bite. In any scenario, be polite and provide education. Never yell at the person. This is the end of the training. Thank you very much for attending our virtual training. We hope that you have a better idea of your role as a volunteer and that we have set you up for success in the field. Please do not hesitate to call or email us if you have any questions or concerns. We really appreciate you participating in this volunteer program. We cannot thank you enough for your commitment to protecting all that Boulder Reservoir has to offer.